The insurance form listed a beneficiary I'd never heard of, a woman my husband planned to marry the same month as our 10th anniversary. Her name was typed in clean, official letters. Recipient in the event of policyholder incapacity or death, Kendra Millwood. Fiancé. Hey. If you want to hear how this ends, stay with me, because what he didn't know could fill a courthouse. My name is Gloria Reyes, and for 8 years I drove the number 7 bus route through Tucson. 23 stops, 6 days a week, from the East Side terminals to the University District and back. I learned to think in schedules. Departure times, arrival windows, the margin between on time and late. When you drive a bus for a living, you understand that most people only notice you when something goes wrong. A delay, a missed stop, a route change. Otherwise, you're invisible. You're just the person behind the wheel, doing the job, keeping things moving. I met Danny Reyes on the number 7. He was a graduate student at the University of Arizona, studying hospitality management. He rode my route twice a week, always polite, always with a book. One afternoon, he left his notebook on the seat. I turned it in to Lost and Found, and he came back the next day to claim it. He thanked me. I smiled. He asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. I said yes. We were married a year later at the courthouse downtown. Small ceremony. His parents flew in from Albuquerque. My sister stood as my witness. We honeymooned in Sedona for 3 days, stayed in a budget motel, hiked the Red Rocks. Danny talked about his plans. He wanted to open an event venue, something elegant, weddings, galas, corporate retreats. He had spreadsheets, projections, a 5-year timeline. I believed in him. I believed in us. By year 3, he'd finished his degree and started working at a hotel on the north side, managing events. By year 5, he'd saved enough for a down payment on a historic building near downtown that used to be a bank. High ceilings, marble floors, arched windows. He called it Millwood Hall, after the street it was on. He took out loans. I co-signed. We both did. By year 7, Millwood Hall was hosting 3 weddings a month. Danny hired staff. He bought linens, glassware, sound equipment. He worked 70-hour weeks. I kept driving my route, kept contributing to the joint account, kept our apartment clean and our bills paid. By year 8, he stopped coming home for dinner. I didn't notice at first. Danny had always worked long hours, events ran late, vendors needed managing, couples had last-minute crises. But somewhere around month 90 of our marriage, the late nights became overnights. The overnights became weekends. And the weekends became a silence I couldn't ignore. He said he was sleeping at the venue. There was a small office in the back with a couch. It made sense. He'd text me good night, he'd text me good morning. But I wouldn't see him for 3, sometimes 4 days at a time. I told myself it was temporary. The business was growing, he was stressed. Once things stabilized, it would get better. I didn't ask questions. I trusted schedules, I trusted systems. And I trusted him. The insurance form arrived on a Tuesday in late September. It came in a large envelope from Platinum West Insurance, addressed to both of us. I opened it at the kitchen table after my shift, still in my uniform, my boots unlaced. It was a policy update notification. Our joint life insurance policy, the one we'd taken out when we bought the venue, was being amended. Routine paperwork, the letter said. Please review and sign. I flipped through the pages. Coverage amounts, premium schedules, beneficiary designations, and there it was, on page 4. Primary beneficiary, Kendra Millwood, fiancé. Hey. I read it 3 times. Then I checked the policyholder name. Daniel Jerome Reyes. I checked the date. The amendment had been filed 6 weeks earlier. I sat there, holding the paper, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Then I called the insurance company. The representative who answered was polite and efficient. I gave her the policy number. I asked about the amendment. Yes, ma'am, that was submitted by Mr. Reyes on August 10th. The updated beneficiary is listed as Kendra Millwood. And what's her relationship to the policyholder? A pause. It says fiancé. Hey, we're married, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. I see that in our records, yes. You're listed as a co-owner of the policy, Mrs. Reyes, so he can't just change the beneficiary without my signature. That's correct. The amendment requires both signatures to be finalized. We're still waiting on yours. I thanked her and hung up. I sat there until the light outside faded and the kitchen went dark. Then I took a photo of every page. I didn't confront Danny. I didn't call him, didn't text him, didn't drive to the venue and demand answers. I went to work the next morning like always. I clocked in at 5:45 a.m., pulled the number 7 out of the depot at 6, and started my route. 23 stops, East Side terminals to the University District and back. I picked up the early commuters, the students with their backpacks, the healthcare workers heading to the hospital. I called out the stops. I waited at the lights. I kept the schedule. And while I drove, I thought, when you drive a bus, you learn to see patterns. The passenger who boards at the same stop every Tuesday. The intersection where the light always runs long. The route change that saves 2 minutes but costs you 3 at the next stop. You notice what repeats. You notice what doesn't fit. Danny's late nights fit a pattern. His overnight stays fit a pattern. And now, the insurance form fit the same pattern. I just hadn't been looking. That afternoon, I went to the public library. I sat at a computer terminal and searched the county records database. Property ownership, business filings, liens and loans. Millwood Hall was titled under an LLC, Millwood Events Group. Registered agent, Daniel Reyes. Co-owner, Gloria Reyes. 50-50 ownership. I was on the deed, I was on the loan. I'd signed everything when we bought it. I pulled up the business bank account next, the one Danny said was for operational expenses. I had login access. I'd set up the account with him 3 years earlier, back when the venue was still just a dream. I hadn't checked it in over a year. I logged in, the balance was $73,000. I scrolled through the transactions, deposits from events, payments to vendors, payroll for staff, and then, starting 8 months ago, a new pattern, monthly transfers to a personal account I didn't recognize. $1,500. Every month. Like clockwork. I pulled up the account details. The transfers were going to a Wells Fargo account under the name Kendra Millwood. I took screenshots. I saved them to a thumb drive. I logged out. Then I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling something cold and clear settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, not rage, just the recognition that I'd been rerouted without being told. I called a lawyer the next day. Her name was Bethany Ortega, and her office was in a strip mall on the south side, between a nail salon and a tax prep service. I'd found her on a legal aid website. She specialized in family law and business dissolution. Her consultation fee was $100. I paid in cash. I sat across from her in a small office that smelled like vanilla air freshener and told her everything. The insurance form, the transfers, the co-ownership of the venue. She took notes in a yellow legal pad, her pen moving fast. "How long have you known?" she asked. 5 days, and he doesn't know you know. No. She leaned back in her chair. Good. Statements, tax returns, business filings. If he's been transferring community property to another woman, that's dissipation of marital assets. If he's planning to marry her while still married to you, that's a different kind of stupid. We're definitely still married. Then he's committing fraud. On the insurance company, at minimum. Possibly on you, depending on what else we find. She tapped her pen on the pad. Arizona is a community property state. Anything acquired during the marriage is 50-50 unless there's a prenup. You signed the loan documents for the venue, right? Yes. Then you own half. Possibly more. If we can prove he's been mismanaging funds or hiding assets, what do I need to do? Get me everything. And don't let him know you're looking. I left her office with a list of documents and a timeline. She wanted everything by the end of the month. That gave me 3 weeks. I went home, changed out of my uniform, and started searching. Danny kept files in a cabinet in our bedroom closet. Tax returns, business records, loan agreements. I'd signed most of them without reading them carefully. He'd always handled the paperwork, and I trusted him. I pulled everything out. I took photos with my phone, 462 photos over 2 nights, taken in 10-minute intervals while Danny was at the venue. I found the original loan documents for Millwood Hall, $500,000, co-signed by both of us. I found the business formation papers, 50-50 ownership, filed 3 years ago. I found the tax returns, joint filing, my income listed alongside his. And then I found something else. A wedding venue contract, dated 3 months out, December 15th. The client name, Daniel Reyes and Kendra Millwood. The venue, Millwood Hall. He was planning to marry her at the venue we owned together, on our 10th anniversary. I took a photo. I put everything back exactly where I'd found it. Then I sat on the floor of the closet and breathed. In, out, like a schedule, like a route, one stop at a time. Bethany reviewed everything in 1 week. When she called me back, her voice was calm but sharp. "Gloria, this is worse than I thought." "How much worse?" "He's been funneling money out of the business account for almost a year. Not just the $1,500 a month to Kendra. There are other transfers too. To personal accounts, to credit cards in his name only, to vendors that don't show up in the business expense records." "How much total?" "Roughly $48,000. I closed my eyes. "That's community property, yes. And he moved it without your knowledge or consent. That's textbook dissipation. What about the wedding?" "The venue contract is the cherry on top. He's using a community asset, a business you co-own, to host his wedding to another woman. While still married to you, is that illegal?" "The bigamy would be, if he went through with it. But he won't get that far. We're filing first." She paused. "There's something else. I ran Kendra Millwood through the public records. She's listed as the manager of a new LLC, filed 2 months ago. Millwood Events and Design. Same business category as your venue. She's starting a competing business? Looks like it, and I'd bet money your husband is planning to transfer assets into it once he's free of you. Can he do that? Not if we freeze everything first. Bethany's plan was precise. We'd file for divorce and request an immediate freeze on all business and joint accounts. We'd file a motion for a forensic accounting of Millwood Events Group. And we'd request an emergency hearing to prevent any transfer or encumbrance of community assets pending the final division. When do we file? I asked. When do you want to file? I thought about the venue contract. December 15th, 10 weeks away. November 1st, I said. Any particular reason? I want him to know before he sends out the invitations. Bethany smiled. I'll have the papers ready. I spent the next 2 weeks driving my route and gathering the last pieces of evidence. I pulled every bank statement, every credit card bill, every receipt I could find. I documented every transfer, every expense, every dollar that didn't add up, and I didn't say a word. Danny came home twice in those 2 weeks. Once to pick up clothes, once to sleep for 4 hours before heading back to the venue. Both times he barely looked at me. You okay? I asked the second time. Just busy, he said. Big event this weekend. Anything I can help with? No, I've got it covered. He left before sunrise. I watched him go, then went back to my files. The papers were served on November 1st at 11:30 in the morning. Danny was at Millwood Hall, meeting with a florist for someone's winter wedding. The process server walked in, asked for Daniel Reyes, and handed him the envelope in front of 3 staff members and a very surprised florist. He called me 14 minutes later. I was on my route, stopped at the intersection of Speedway and Campbell. I let it ring twice, then answered. Gloria, what the hell is this? Divorce papers. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. We need to talk about this. We don't. You can talk to my attorney. Gloria, her name is Bethany Ortega. Her number's on the papers. I hung up. He called back immediately. I didn't answer. He called 4 more times that afternoon. I didn't answer those either. At the end of my shift, I clocked out, went home, and made myself dinner. Chicken and rice, the way my mother used to make it. I ate slowly, methodically, at the kitchen table. Then I checked my email. Bethany had sent me an update. The freeze had been granted. All business accounts, all joint accounts, and the property itself were frozen pending a hearing. Danny couldn't transfer, sell, or encumber any of it. The hearing was set for November 20th. That gave him 19 days to sit with what he'd done. I slept better that night than I had in months. Danny tried to talk to me 6 times over the next 2 weeks. He came to the apartment. He waited outside the depot. He sent emails, long and rambling, full of apologies and excuses and promises to fix everything. I didn't respond. Bethany told me not to engage, and I didn't. I forwarded the emails to her. I documented every attempt at contact, and I kept driving my route. The hearing took place on a cold Tuesday morning at the Pima County Superior Court. I wore a navy dress I'd bought at Target the day before and sat beside Bethany at the petitioner's table. Danny sat across from us with his lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked annoyed to be there. The judge, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and no-nonsense glasses, reviewed the filings in silence for what felt like 10 minutes. Then she looked up. Mr. Reyes, do you dispute that you transferred approximately $48,000 from the business account of Millwood Events Group to personal accounts without your wife's knowledge or consent? Danny's lawyer leaned forward. Your Honor, those transfers were for legitimate business expenses. I didn't ask you. I asked Mr. Reyes. Danny shifted in his seat. Some of the transfers were business-related, yes. And some were not? A pause. Some were personal. Were they community funds? The business is community property, yes. And did you inform your wife before moving those funds? No. The judge made a note. And is it true that you attempted to change the beneficiary on a joint life insurance policy to a woman named Kendra Millwood, identifying her as your fiancée, hey? Danny's face went pale. I didn't finalize it because your wife didn't sign, yes. And is it true that you booked your own wedding venue, Millwood Hall, a community asset, for a ceremony on December 15th of this year, identifying Kendra Millwood as your bride? Silence. Mr. Reyes? Yes. The judge removed her glasses. Mr. Reyes, I've been on the bench for 16 years, and I've seen a lot of things. But booking your wedding to another woman at a venue you co-own with your current wife is a new one. Danny's lawyer started to speak, but the judge held up a hand. I'm granting the petitioner's motion. All accounts remain frozen. The property remains frozen, and I'm ordering a full forensic accounting of Millwood Events Group to be completed within 60 days. We'll reconvene for a final division hearing on January 15th. She looked at Danny. And Mr. Reyes, if you so much as think about transferring, selling, or encumbering any asset before that hearing, I will hold you in contempt. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Good. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. The forensic accounting took 8 weeks. The accountant Bethany hired was a man named Richard Fan, 62, meticulous and deeply uninterested in anyone's feelings. He pulled 3 years of records. He traced every deposit, every withdrawal, every transfer, and he found more than we'd expected. In addition to the $48,000 transferred to Kendra, Danny had moved another $73,000 into accounts we hadn't known about. He'd opened credit cards in the business's name and racked up $62,000 in personal charges, furniture, electronics, a down payment on a condo in Scottsdale. He'd reclassified personal meals as business expenses and pocketed the tax deductions. Total dissipation, $183,000. He's been stealing from you for 2 years, Richard said, sitting across from Bethany and me in her office. Methodically, carefully, and very, very stupidly. Can we get it back? I asked. In theory, yes. In practice, some of it's been spent, but the judge can award you a larger share of the remaining assets to compensate. Bethany leaned forward. How much is the business worth? Richard slid a folder across the table. Conservatively, $760,000. That includes the property, the equipment, the client contracts, and the brand value. I stared at the number. Your husband's dissipation reduces his share, Richard continued. If the judge allocates it fairly, you're looking at a 65-35 split in your favor, maybe 70-30, depending on how angry she is. And if he can't buy me out, then you sell. And you split the proceeds according to the court's allocation. I sat back in my chair, the numbers settling over me like weight. $760,000. I'd co-signed a loan for $500,000. I'd worked my shifts, paid into our joint account, kept our life running while Danny built his dream. And he'd stolen from me. Let's go to trial, I said. Bethany smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. The final hearing was set for January 15th. Danny's lawyer requested 2 continuances. Both were denied. By the time we walked into the courtroom, it was late February, and I'd been sleeping at my sister's house for 3 months. The courtroom was the same. The judge was the same. But this time, the table on Danny's side was covered in documents, and his lawyer looked exhausted. Bethany presented our case in 90 minutes. She walked through the forensic accounting, the transfers, the dissipation, the insurance fraud attempt, and the venue contract. She submitted 3 years of tax returns showing that I'd contributed equally to the household income when you factored in my salary and benefits. She submitted Richard Fan's report, which outlined every dollar Danny had moved without my knowledge. Danny's lawyer argued that the business was Danny's idea, his effort, his expertise. He argued that some of the transfers were legitimate. He argued that I'd benefited from the business's success. The judge listened without expression. When both sides rested, she took a 15-minute recess. When she returned, she didn't sit down. I've reviewed the evidence, she said, and I've reviewed the applicable law. The business, Millwood Events Group, was created during the marriage with community funds. It is community property. However, Mr. Reyes has dissipated $183,000 in marital assets over a 2-year period. He has attempted to defraud an insurance company, and he has demonstrated a pattern of dishonesty that undermines any claim to equitable treatment. She paused. I am awarding Mrs. Reyes a 70% interest in Millwood Events Group. Mr. Reyes will retain 30%. Mrs. Reyes has the option to buy out Mr. Reyes's share at fair market value, or to force a sale of the business. If she chooses a sale, the proceeds will be divided 70-30 in her favor. Mr. Reyes is also ordered to reimburse Mrs. Reyes 50% of the dissipated funds, $91,500 within 6 months, or the amount will be deducted from his share of the sale proceeds. Danny's face went white. Additionally, the judge continued, Mr. Reyes is responsible for all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Reyes in this proceeding. That includes costs. She looked at Danny. Mr. Reyes, I want to be very clear. You used community property to fund a relationship with another woman. You attempted to commit insurance fraud. You stole from your wife. If I could award her more, I would. As it is, you should consider yourself fortunate that she's not pursuing criminal charges. The gavel came down. I didn't buy Danny out. I couldn't afford it and I didn't want to. Instead, I forced the sale. Millwood Hall went on the market in March. It sold in 6 weeks to a hotel group out of Phoenix. The final sale price was $810,000. After the loans and liens were paid, the net proceeds were $540,000. 70% of that was $378,000. Minus the $91,000 Danny owed me for dissipation, his 30% came out to $70,900. My total share, $469,100. The sale closed in May. The check arrived a week later. I deposited it into a new account I'd opened in my name only. Then I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and cried. Not because I was sad, because it was over. I kept driving the number 7 for another year. Not because I needed the money, I had enough to live on for a long time if I was careful, but because I liked the work. I liked the routine. I liked the passengers who smiled and said, "Good morning," and the ones who didn't, and the students who fell asleep with their heads against the window. I liked knowing where I was supposed to be, and when, and why. In the meantime, I started looking at properties. Small ones. Commercial spaces that needed work. I didn't have a plan yet, not exactly, but I knew I wanted to build something mine. I found a place in October, a small storefront on 4th Avenue near the university. It used to be a bookstore. It had good bones big windows, exposed brick, hardwood floors that needed refinishing. The rent was reasonable. The landlord liked me. I signed the lease. I spent the next 3 months renovating. I refinished the floors myself, on weekends, on my knees with a sander and a bucket of stain. I painted the walls. I installed shelving. I bought tables and chairs from estate sales and refinished those too. In January, I opened a coffee shop. I called it Route 7. Route 7 wasn't fancy, it wasn't trendy. It was just a clean, quiet place where people could sit and drink good coffee and not be bothered. I hired 2 part-time baristas, both students at the university. I worked the early shifts myself. I made the schedule. I kept the books. I learned quickly that running a small business was not that different from driving a bus. You showed up on time, you did the work, and you adjusted when something didn't go according to plan. By the end of the first year, we were breaking even. By the end of the second year, we were profitable. Not enough to make me rich, but enough to pay the bills and keep the lights on and put a little away each month. I liked it. I liked knowing every detail, every expense, every dollar that came in and went out. I liked that no one could take it from me. Danny moved to Scottsdale. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he was managing events for a resort. I heard a year later that he and Kendra had broken up. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. I sold the apartment Danny and I had shared and bought a small house near the university. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a backyard just big enough for a garden. I planted tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. I learned to cook properly, not just the quick meals I used to make between shifts. I had people over, my sister, a few friends from work, the baristas from the shop. I built a life. Not the life I'd imagined at 25, standing in a courthouse in a borrowed dress, believing love was enough. But a better one, because it was mine. Every piece of it, earned, built, chosen, one stop at a time. 5 years after the divorce, on a Sunday morning in late spring, I stood behind the counter at Route 7, pulling espresso shots and watching the early crowd filter in, students with laptops, a couple sharing a pastry, an older man who came every weekend and read the newspaper in the corner. The door chimed and I looked up. Danny. He stood in the doorway looking older, thinner, uncertain. He saw me and froze. I finished the shot I was pulling, wiped my hands on my apron and walked over. "Can I help you?" I said. He hesitated. "I didn't know this was yours." "It is. It's nice. Thank you." A long pause. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," he said, "for everything. I was stupid and cruel. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know." I looked at him. The man I'd loved, the man I'd trusted, the man who'd stolen from me and lied to me and planned a wedding to another woman at a venue we built together. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction, just the calm, clear recognition that he was a stranger now. "Okay," I said. "Okay, I heard you. Thank you for saying it." He nodded slowly. Are you happy?" I thought about it. About my shop, my house, my garden. About the baristas laughing in the back room. About the quiet, steady life I'd built from nothing. "Yes," I said. "I am." He smiled, just a little. Sad and genuine. "Good, that's good." He left. I went back to the counter, pulled another shot, steamed milk, and made a cappuccino for the woman waiting at the register. And I didn't think about him again. By the time I turned 45, Route 7 had been open for 7 years. I'd paid off the initial renovation costs. I'd built a steady base of regulars. I'd hired a manager, a sharp, kind woman named Iris, who ran the day-to-day operations while I focused on the books and the long-term planning. I still drove, sometimes not the number 7 bus, but my own car, through the city I'd lived in for decades. Past the depot where I used to clock in. Past the university where I'd met Danny. Past the building that used to house Millwood Hall, now a co-working space. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel cheated. I felt free. I started teaching too. A community college across town offered a night class in small business management, and they needed an instructor. I said yes. Once a week, I stood in front of 20 adults, some younger than me, some older, all of them working full-time and trying to build something on the side, and I taught them what I'd learned: how to read a balance sheet, how to track expenses, how to recognize when someone's lying to you with numbers. One night, a woman in the back row stayed after class. She was in her early 30s, tired eyes, a notebook covered in highlighter. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "How did you know you could do this?" "Do what?" "Start over. Build something new. After everything fell apart, I thought about it." "I didn't know," I said. "I just knew I couldn't stay where I was. So I took the next step. And then the next one, and eventually I looked up and realized I was somewhere new." She nodded slowly. "I'm in the middle of a divorce. My husband ran our business into the ground. I'm trying to figure out what's next." "You'll figure it out," I said. "One step at a time." She smiled. "Thank you." After she left, I stood in the empty classroom, erasing the whiteboard, straightening the chairs. The building was quiet. I liked it that way. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who drove a bus and trusted a man who didn't deserve it. The one who found an insurance form with another woman's name and didn't fall apart. She was strong, stronger than she knew, and she built something worth keeping. I sold Route 7 when I was 51, not because I had to, but because Iris wanted to buy it, and I wanted to let her. She'd been managing it for 4 years. She knew the regulars, the suppliers, the rhythm of the place. It was hers in every way that mattered. We negotiated a fair price. I helped her secure the loan, and on a warm afternoon in March, I signed the papers and handed her the keys. "You sure about this?" she asked. "I'm sure. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." She smiled. "You'll figure it out." I did. I spent the next year traveling. Not luxury travel, I wasn't that kind of rich. But I rented a car and drove. I saw the Grand Canyon at sunrise. I spent a week in a cabin in Flagstaff. I visited my sister in Albuquerque. I went to the coast and stood on the beach and watched the waves. I didn't have a schedule, I didn't have a route, and it felt good. When I came back to Tucson, I bought a smaller house near the foothills. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a porch with a view of the mountains. I planted a garden. I read books. I took a ceramics class at the community center and made bowls that were lopsided but mine. I lived quietly. I lived well. And I learned something I hadn't known before, that the best kind of life is the one you don't have to prove to anyone. Not loud, not impressive, just yours. I'm 58 now. I wake up early, make coffee, and sit on my porch watching the light change over the Catalinas. I tend my garden. I visit my sister. I meet old friends for lunch. I volunteer at a legal aid clinic, helping people untangle financial messes in divorce cases. I'm good at it. I know what to look for. I know how to stay calm when everything feels like chaos. I know how to take the next step, and the next, until the path becomes clear. People ask me sometimes if I ever think about Danny. If I wonder what happened to him. If I regret the years we spent together. I don't. Not because I've forgiven him, I have, mostly, the way you forgive a scar. Not because I've forgotten, I haven't. But because holding on to anger is like holding on to a schedule for a route you don't drive anymore. It doesn't serve you. It just keeps you stuck. I think about the woman I was at 32, standing in her kitchen, holding an insurance form with another woman's name on it. I think about how scared she was, how small she felt, and I wish I could tell her, "You're not small, you're not powerless. You're about to do something hard and you're going to survive it. And on the other side, you're going to build a life so much better than the one you're losing." But I can't tell her that. She has to learn it herself. The same way I did. One stop at a time. Last month, I got a call from Bethany. She's retired now, but we still talk every few months. She wanted to tell me about a case she'd referred to, a younger attorney, a woman, whose husband had tried to change a life insurance beneficiary without her knowledge. "Sound familiar?" Bethany said. "Very. I told her about you. I hope that's okay." "Of course." She wanted to know if you'd be willing to talk to her client, just to let her know it's possible to get through it. I thought about it. "Sure, give her my number." The woman called 2 days later. Her name was Maria. She was 36, a teacher, recently separated. Her husband had tried to name his girlfriend as the beneficiary on a policy they'd bought together. She was terrified. She didn't know what to do. I listened. I told her my story. Not all of it, just the parts that mattered. The insurance form, the freeze, the forensic accounting, the courtroom. "And you're okay now?" she asked. "I'm better than okay." "How long did it take?" "A long time, but not as long as I thought." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you. I needed to hear that." "You're going to be fine," I said. "Just take it one step at a time." After we hung up, I sat on my porch and watched the sunset. I thought about all the women I'd talked to over the years, the ones at the legal aid clinic, the ones in my classes, the ones who called because someone gave them my number and said I might understand. I thought about the life I'd built. not despite what happened, but because of what I chose to do with it. And I thought about the truth I'd learned, slowly, over years of hard work and small victories. The route you planned isn't always the one you end up driving, but if you keep moving forward, you'll still get somewhere worth going. There's a story I tell sometimes when people ask how I got through it. It's about a day, maybe 6 months after the divorce was finalized, when I was driving the number 7 and a passenger got on a young woman, maybe 25, with a black eye she tried to cover with makeup. She sat near the front. She didn't make eye contact. She paid her fare in quarters. At the end of the route, when everyone else had gotten off, she stayed in her seat. I turned around. "This is the last stop, I know," she said. I don't know where to go." I pulled the bus over. I turned off the engine. I walked back and sat across from her. "Are you safe?" I asked. She nodded. "I left this morning. I don't have anywhere to go." I gave her the address of a shelter I knew. I gave her $20 from my wallet. I told her it would be hard, but it would get better. "How do you know?" she asked. "Because I've been there. Not exactly there, but close enough." She looked at me, really looked at me, and something in her face shifted. "Did you make it out?" "I did. Are you happy now?" I thought about it. About my apartment, my shifts, the divorce papers that had just been finalized, about the empty space where a marriage used to be, and the quiet, tentative hope beginning to fill it. "I'm getting there," I said. She got off the bus. I watched her walk toward the shelter, her bag over her shoulder, her steps slow but steady. I don't know what happened to her. I never saw her again, but I think about her sometimes, and I hope she made it. The same way I did. I'm writing this now, at 58, from the porch of a house I own outright. The garden is full. The sun is setting. Somewhere in the city, the number 7 bus is running its route, driven by someone I've never met. I don't drive anymore. I don't run a coffee shop. I don't teach. But I still wake up every day with a schedule, not someone else's mine. I tend the garden. I read. I help people who need it. I live quietly, deliberately, in a life I built from the ground up when everything I thought I knew fell apart. And I've learned this: love isn't enough. Trust isn't enough. Even hard work isn't always enough. But knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less, that's everything. Danny thought I was just the woman who drove a bus. The woman who signed the papers he put in front of her. The woman who wouldn't notice, wouldn't question, wouldn't fight back. He was wrong. I noticed everything. I documented everything. And when the time came, I fought back with the only weapons that matter: evidence, patience, and the absolute certainty that I deserved better. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't make a scene. I just took what was mine. And I built a life worth living. If you've ever been where I was, holding a piece of paper with another woman's name on it, wondering how you missed the signs, wondering if you're strong enough to start over, I want you to know this. You are. You're stronger than you think, stronger than he thinks. And the life you build on the other side will be yours in a way nothing ever was before. One stop at a time, one step at a time, until you look up and realize you made it. You're free. And the view from here is beautiful. Years blur when you stop measuring time by what you lost and start measuring it by what you've built. I don't remember every case I helped with at the legal aid clinic or every student who sat in my classroom, but I remember the moments that mattered. The woman who called to say she'd won her case. The man who emailed to say he'd opened his own business. The quiet, steady accumulation of lives rebuilt, one careful step at a time. I'm 63 now. I've lived in Tucson for 40 years. I've driven its streets, walked its sidewalks, watched it grow and change, and stay the same in the ways that matter. I've lived long enough to see Route 7, the coffee shop, not the bus route, expand into a second location. Iris runs both now. She hired her daughter to manage the new one. I went to the opening. I stood in the back and watched people line up for coffee. And I felt something I didn't expect. Pride, yes, but also a deep, quiet gratitude that I'd been able to build something worth passing on. I've lived long enough to see Maria, the woman who called me years ago about the insurance form, finish law school and join Bethany's old firm. She called me when she passed the bar. She said I'd saved her life. I told her she'd saved her own. I just showed her it was possible. I've lived long enough to bury my sister and to stand at her grave with her children and to know that grief and gratitude can live in the same breath. And I've lived long enough to understand that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's peace. Danny never got that. I heard, years ago, that he'd married someone else, not Kendra, someone new. I heard they divorced 2 years later. I heard he moved to California, then back to New Mexico, then somewhere else. I stopped keeping track. Because his life stopped being relevant to mine the moment I signed the papers and walked out of that courtroom. I didn't need him to fail for me to succeed. I just needed him to be gone. On my 65th birthday, I threw a small party. Not at my house at Route 7. Iris closed early and set up tables in the back. 20 people came. Old friends, former students, a few of the regulars from my bus driving days who still recognized me. We ate cake. We told stories. We laughed. Someone asked me what the best part of getting older was. I thought about it. You stop needing permission, I said. You stop waiting for someone else to tell you you're good enough, or smart enough, or strong enough. You just know. When did you figure that out? Someone else asked. The day I found out my husband was planning to marry someone else, I said. At the venue we owned together, on our anniversary, the table went quiet. What did you do? A younger woman asked, wide-eyed. I took everything he thought was his, I said. Legally, quietly, completely. Someone laughed, then someone else, then the whole table. Good for you, Iris said, raising her glass. We toasted, and in that moment, surrounded by people I'd chosen, in a place I'd built, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Whole. Not healed. Healing is a process, not a destination. But whole, complete, enough. I'm writing this now at 65 from the same porch I've sat on for years. The mountains are the same. The light is the same. But I'm different. Not because I'm older, though I am. Not because I'm wiser, though I hope I am. But because I know, now, what I didn't know at 32, or 40, or even 50. You don't need someone else to complete you. You don't need a partner to validate you. You don't need a big house, or a fancy title, or a love story that ends in happily ever after. You just need to know your worth, and refuse to settle for less. Danny thought I was small, forgettable, someone he could discard when he found someone better. He was wrong. I wasn't small, I was just quiet. And quiet isn't the same as weak. I took my time. I gathered my evidence. I built my case. And when the moment came, I didn't yell, didn't beg, didn't make a scene. I just took what was mine. And I walked away. Not in anger, not in bitterness, in peace. Because the truth doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be true. And the life I built on my own, from the ground up, one deliberate step at a time, is proof enough. If you're reading this, and you're where I was once, holding a piece of paper with a name that isn't yours, wondering if you're strong enough to start over, I want you to know you are. Take the next step, then the next, then the next. And one day you'll look up and realize you made it. Not to where you thought you'd be, but somewhere better. Somewhere that's entirely, undeniably, beautifully yours. The last time I drove a bus was 23 years ago. But I still think in routes, departure points, destinations, the space in between where the work happens. I've learned that most of life is the space in between. Not the crisis, not the resolution, but the quiet, steady days where you show up, do the work, and trust that it's leading somewhere. I don't know where I'm going next. I don't have a 5-year plan. I don't have a schedule, but I have a garden. I have a house. I have friends who call just to talk, and students who still send me emails years after they've graduated, and a life that's small in the best possible way. I have mornings on the porch. I have books I've been meaning to read. I have time, and I have the knowledge earned, not given, that I can survive anything. Because I already did. I survived betrayal. I survived divorce. I survived the slow, painful work of rebuilding a life from nothing. And I came out the other side whole. Not perfect, not unmarked, but whole. That's what I'd tell the younger version of me if I could, the one standing in the kitchen holding that insurance form, wondering what to do next. I'd tell her, take the photo, call the lawyer, don't say a word, and then, when the time is right, take everything. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, out of love. Love for yourself, love for the life you deserve, love for the woman you're about to become. Because she's stronger than you know, and the view from where she's standing, it's beautiful. I'll end with this. Last week, I was at the grocery store, and I saw a woman in the checkout line counting change. She was young, maybe 30, and she looked exhausted. Her cart had the basics: bread, peanut butter, pasta. She was $5 short. The cashier waited, patient but impatient. I stepped forward. I'll cover it. The woman looked up, startled. You don't have to. I know. I want to. I handed the cashier a 20. The woman's eyes filled. Thank you. You're welcome. As I walked away, she called after me. I'll pay you back. If you give me your number. I turned around. You don't owe me anything. Just pay it forward when you can. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I don't know her story. I don't know if she was where I was once, scared, broke, trying to hold it together. I don't know if she made it. But I hope she did, because that's the thing about starting over. You don't do it alone. You do it with the help of strangers who see you, who recognize something in you, who give you $5 when you need it most. And then, when you're on the other side, you do the same. You see someone struggling, you help, you pay it forward, not because you owe them, but because you remember what it was like. And really know that the smallest gestures can mean everything. That's the life I've built. Not a loud one, not a flashy one, but one where I show up, do the work, and help when I can. One where I know my worth and refuse to settle for less. One stop at a time, one step at a time, until I look up and realize I made it. And so can you.